couple of days and as we work our way through the committee stages. And I hope, sir, that Mr Chairman, that we will see plenty of the government's Auckland MPs in the House. And I think that there are only 5 of the government's Auckland MPs currently in the House.
Point of order, Honourable John Carter.
It's not appropriate to refer to the absence of MPs.
The member must desist from doing that. You cannot.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
No, I've ruled that's the case. Now, if the member wants to raise another point of order, it ought to be separate, because that. I'm on my feet. It's a long-held tradition of this House that in no way do you refer to the absence of any member from this House.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and I certainly won't refer to the absence of any members of this House by name. I recall in the last time we debated the committee stages of the second Super City Bill, I recall that one of the mayors of Auckland was so moved by the complete absence of any government members that he took to texting them late at night to ask them why they weren't in the House, being held accountable for the legislation that they were pushing through, being held accountable to their voters, to the people in their communities. Mr Chairman, let me say at the outset of this committee stage debate that Labor believes that Auckland's local government arrangements are in need of reform. We support the idea of one mayor, one council, one plan and one rates bill. And we support, Mr Chairman, most of what the Royal Commission had to say. We believe that as our largest city, Auckland has a vital role to play in the life of our nation. It's our gateway to the world, and it must become a magnet for tourists, for investors and for skilled migrants. It must become, for the economic prosperity of our country, a concentration of energy and ideas and skills that will drive our creative industries and generate the science and innovation that our economy needs in the 21st century. We need the ability in Auckland to make the big decisions, for example, building a modern public transport system. The city must have the tools to manage its growth as the population heads towards 2 million people over the next 3 decades. And we must develop our assets, revitalise our central business district and open up the waterfront. We need smart economic development that generates high-quality jobs and opportunity for a rapidly changing population. Mr Chairman, reforming Auckland's governance could go a long way towards setting the city up to meet these challenges. And the process of shaping a unified Auckland could go a long way towards setting the city up and gearing the city up for an exciting period of change. But this bill, sir, is the culmination of a year-long process which has undermined public support for change and which has corroded public confidence and public support of a unified Auckland. The provisions in this bill reflect the same defects in thinking that we've seen in the earlier 2 bills, and they reflect the same concerns that Aucklanders have been raising consistently over the last 18 months. I want to touch on the key concerns that Labor has with this bill. The bill imposes a corporatisation model on Auckland government. It ignores the cries of Aucklanders over the last few months that they do not want central government telling Auckland what it should and should not corporatise in the new Auckland. It imposes the commercial model on the transport CCO, which will consume more than half of the Auckland rates bill, and in a way that is happening in no other city around New Zealand. The powers of local boards, this bill fails to deliver on the promise that this government's been making consistently for the last 12 months, that it would empower local communities. Well, it doesn't. The powers of local boards are highly constrained, and the boards that are being created are nothing like the empowered, capable second tier that the Royal Commission anticipated. This bill strips away the right that Aucklanders currently have in the law to have a direct say on whether or not the ports of Auckland should be privatised. It takes away the right of Aucklanders to decide in a binding referendum about whether the ports should be sold off. Mr Chairman, this bill puts in place a toothless Māori advisory panel. Mr Chair.
Phil Twyford.
Thank you. That is unsatisfactory on this side of the House, and we believe that the government has missed a huge opportunity to move into the 21st century with Māori at the top table making decisions about Auckland's future. That, sir, is a wasted opportunity. It half-heartedly sets up advisory boards for Pacific and ethnic communities. It gives the power to the Mayor to set those boards up and has nothing to say. It has nothing to say about the election or selection of the members of those panels from those communities. We believe that's weak and half-hearted. Sir, in spite of the many soothing noises made by the member for Auckland Central during the weeks that we heard public submissions, this bill fails to deliver any kind of mechanism to guarantee youth participation in the new Auckland. And the member opposite is going to regret the promises that she made to the young people of Auckland. Campaign spending, Mr Chairman, this bill sets up an undemocratic ceiling for campaign spending. It will effectively mean that in the mayoral campaign in the last 3 months, a candidate can spend up to $580,000 in the last 3 months. That is undemocratic. It's a gift to candidates in this election and future elections who are backed by big business or who have huge personal wealth. We are against that. That is undemocratic. It does not allow a level playing field for candidates who want to stand for mayor. For all those reasons, Mr Chairman, Labor has issued a minority report setting out our arguments and setting out why we are opposed to this bill. The government has said time and again that it is listening to Aucklanders. Well, it may have listened, but it certainly hasn't heard. The people of Auckland asked for 3 things from this government, 3 things. They said, don't corporatise local government in Auckland. They said, give local boards real guaranteed powers in law, and do not make it easier to privatise the ports of Auckland. And the government has said no, no and no. It has not listened. It pretends to listen, but on the fundamentals, the content of this bill shows that the government has been determined to steamroller through its agenda in spite of massive public opposition. This bill, sir, passes considerable power from citizens and their elected representatives to hand-picked boards. It imposes the corporatisation of Auckland in a way that no other city or district in this country has been subjected to. It over-centralises power away from communities right across our country's biggest city and gives that power to a 20-member council. And, sir, it ignores the message of the Royal Commission that the new unified Auckland must recognise that its population is getting younger and more diverse by the day, and that the new Auckland Council should work overtime to create a place in Auckland for all those groups and give them a stake in the political process. A toothless Māori advisory board, ethnic and Pacific advisory panels with a 3-year sunset clause and no obligation to elect those members from their communities, and no youth council, and, sir, taking away the democratic safeguard against the privatisation of the ports of Auckland. All those factors have fed into the fact that a solid 50% of Aucklanders do not like the super city, no matter how they're asked. About half of Auckland say they're not happy with it. When asked by the Herald recently, Herald Digipol, if they thought the amalgamated super city would be a better place to live in, 48.5% said no. Whether they were asked whether the single Auckland Council would be better or worse for them, 52.7% of Aucklanders said it would be worse for them. Only 31% said it